Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition
that's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. And when I think that God his Son not sparing sent him to die, I scarce can take it in. That on the cross my burdens gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art. Shall come with shouts of acclamation and take me home. What joy shall fill my heart? Then I shall bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great you are. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great you Lay your troubles down in your dark moments. When your heart's weak, bring yourself broken. You will find me. Who wrote the rain? Who wrote the sun in? Who called your name? Where are you running? I'm gonna be there near or far. I'm gonna meet you where you are. Who wrote the rain? Who wrote the sun in? When you come thirsty, when the well's dry, when your soul's dirty, I am by your side. When your faith's broken, when you can't see, with my arms open, you will find me. Who wrote the rain? Who wrote the sun in? Who called your name? Where are you running? I'm gonna be there near or far. I'm gonna meet you where you are. Who wrote the rain? Who wrote the sun in? You carried all my shame. When you call my name, I am not the same. Who wrote the rain? Who wrote the sun in? Who calls your name? Where are you running? I'm gonna be there near or far. I'm gonna meet you where you are. Who wrote the rain? Who wrote the sun in? Who wrote the rain? Who wrote the sun in?
Good morning, Crosspointe. Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to share with you some of the things that are going on in our community in the coming weeks. We've got lots of opportunities for you to connect with this community over the summer. You can find a comprehensive list of summer activities at crosspointe.org/summer2021. If you're local, I want to remind you that signups are open for Summer Sundays. We are hosting 5 of them throughout the summer, the first of which is Sunday, June 27th from 5 to 7 p.m. This is a great time for you and your family to come and connect with the Crosspointe community in person. There will be food trucks, music, and a laid-back atmosphere for us to just enjoy being in each other's company. I encourage you to go ahead and RSVP at crosspointe.org/summer Sundays. Also, I want to thank you for the way that you continue to give to this community. Your generosity allows us to be far more impactful collectively than we could ever be individually. If you're interested in supporting what this community is up to locally and globally, we invite you to give financially. You can do that through stocks, PayPals, mail-in checks, debit cards, or by going to crosspointe.org/contribute. You can also text Crosspointe NC to 77977 and you'll have a link sent to your phone and you can choose how you would like to contribute. You know, sometimes it is difficult to see the fruit of our collective efforts, and that's why I want to take a moment to highlight our graduating seniors. In last Sunday's service, Jonathan shared with us that this month we will be sharing some information and important moments in family ministry. Family ministry nurtures a child's faith and partners with their family on a week-to-week basis. We treasure the opportunity to invest in a child's faith on a consistent basis. These efforts are bookended by baby dedication and senior recognition. Last Sunday, we were able to celebrate the class of 2021 at senior recognition. While this event does technically pertain to a small portion of our church community, I would like to encourage you to think of it as a celebration for our whole church. That moment of celebrating a young person's graduation from high school is the culmination of millions of other moments of nurturing that young person within our community. Through the years, many of you have planted and watered seeds of faith in our babies, children, and teenagers. Over time, those have grown and now they bear fruit. Our volunteers that faithfully invest in young people have led to this moment. As a member of this community, you may have encouraged their parents by giving a listening ear or an encouraging word at just the right time. You have helped them to reach this moment. Our graduating seniors are a reminder to all of us that it is a blessing to be part of a loving, faithful community. I want to thank you, Crosspointe, for the ways that you have shown up for these students and for their families over the years. Thank you for loving them well. I know that you have shaped their lives. However, I think that they can speak to that far better than I can. So I present to you the class of 2021 in their own words.
I think what I'm grateful for my time at Crosspointe is the connections that I've made.
The trips that we went on were very moving and had a lot of fun doing those.
I've been able to go on mission trips with the church and serve and go on retreats and learn what church camp is like and how you can interact and teach people to learn about God and learn about God yourself.
Definitely the leaders. They've made a really big impact in my life.
Like ever since I was young, you've had like amazing leaders stepping me through like everything.
The relationships I've created with all of my peers.
I think I'm really grateful for all the relationships that I've been able to develop.
It's really been life-changing for some of the experiences and relationships that I've gained throughout my time at Crosspointe.
The value that I've learned at Crosspointe that I would say I think is most prominent is service. It's something that I hope to carry on with me.
I would probably say that the biggest value I've learned at Crosspointe is you can be friends with anybody.
Specifically, one thing that Crosspointe has taught me that'll help me throughout my whole life is the value of kind of loving other people, like despite anything.
So I was able to just be myself, and I think moving forward doing that, it'll just make life easier and smoother and just happier for me.
You never know quite what somebody's going through, and you need to keep an open ear and an open mind to everything that's going around. Make sure your shoulder's always there for somebody to lean on if they need it, because like I said earlier, you just never know what somebody could be going through.
Anyone, no matter like their race, sexuality, like their background, their culture, like is loved, and it's our job as Christians to love God and love others, and I really appreciate that emphasis.
Making people feel included is super important, but also making them feel like they're invited, like they're wanted, like we want them here, we want people to come, and like they're valued once they get here. It's just super important, and I hope that's something that I can carry on from Crosspointe.
To all of the people and my leaders that I have met at Crosspointe, I just want to say thank you for putting in all of your time and getting to know each and every one of us.
I felt accepted and loved by someone even through my worst days.
I know y'all made a big impact on my life, so I appreciate it.
I'd just like to say one big thank you. I mean, I appreciate all of you. You've always kept your mind open, talking to us, being really relatable, and being able to share some laughter. And most importantly, I feel like I've never been talked down to like I'm a kid here. I feel like I've always been treated as equal, and you can't find that everywhere else. This has just been a very open and positive community for me.
You guys have done so much for me to help me grow up. You taught me so much about God and how to help others and how to be a good man.
Specifically, like all like the youth leaders and the volunteer leaders have taught me a lot about, again, how to be a human being to other people.
I definitely want to thank my life group for having an impact on me, because they've helped me be who I am, and they definitely helped inspire
and want me to come back every week.
Thank you so much for being on this journey with all of us through elementary, middle, and high school. You shaped us into the people we are today, and I'm just really grateful that I got to have the best 4 years of my life at Crosspointe.
I just wanna be where you are. I'm on the edge of my seat, staring blankly at the ceiling. I hear you saying my name. I don't know what I could say to make you feel at peace. I see the earth in my mind, spinning slowly for the first time. I guess this is my way to hide 100,000 feet in the sky to make me feel at peace, at peace, to make me feel at peace, at peace.
Good morning, everyone. I want to tell you this morning about a guy named Thomas. Thomas was a facts guy. He was an investigator. He had seen a lot of things in his life. He'd heard a lot of amazing claims, and he wasn't one to accept things at face value. Like a lot of us, he needed proof. He needed a fuller understanding of the what, of the why, of the how before he committed to belief. And once, when Jesus was talking with the disciples, Jesus gave this beautiful poetic description about going to his Father's house, about its rooms. And when he was done, Jesus looked kind of knowingly at the disciples and he said, "You know the way to the place I'm going." But Thomas wasn't one to sit around and interpret poetry. He wanted to nail down the facts. So he was the disciple that was brave enough to ask Jesus for clarification. He wanted a few more details. He said, "Actually, I need a few more details, Jesus. You haven't given us a map, so we don't actually know where we're going." Because see, Thomas didn't commit to poetry. He would get the necessary information so he could prepare for what was potentially coming. And I imagine Thomas kind of as the disciple that always chimed in the conversation with comments like, "Hey, that's really interesting. Did you know that?" And then had a nice little quip about some fact. Well, one night, a while later, after this incident with the poetry and the maps, after Jesus' death, Jesus appeared to the disciples in resurrected bodily form. He appeared to everybody except Thomas, because Thomas wasn't with them for some reason. And the text doesn't tell us where Thomas was. Maybe he was taking some personal time to think. Maybe he was picking up dinner. We don't know. But regardless, he missed Jesus' miraculous resurrected visit. And when Thomas got home, he was greeted much like you might imagine he would have been. Everybody gathered around him. They were talking at once. They were telling him all about the things that he'd missed, but he didn't believe it. It didn't add up to what he already knew to be true. He just shook his head and he said, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hand and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." Thomas needed to see it with his own eyes to believe it. And I'm sure as the disciples were telling him about Jesus' visit, he's running through in his head all the possible rational explanations of what had happened while he had been gone. Mass hysteria, the side effects of incredible grief, poor lighting, somebody playing a trick on him. There were any number of reasonable explanations for what the other disciples had experienced. And like the poetry incident, he wasn't going to open up his heart to belief until he knew for sure, because it was too dangerous. But then, a week later, this happened again. Jesus inexplicably, miraculously appeared. Through the doors that were all locked, Jesus came and stood among all the disciples. And this time, Thomas was in the room. He witnessed it. Now, Jesus had known Thomas for a while, and he understood who Thomas was at his core. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't annoyed. He didn't shame Thomas for his desire to know through proof. He just locked eyes with him. He held out his hands and he said, "Put your finger here. See my hands? Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Do not be unbelieving, but believe." So Thomas did. And once he had proof, once he had worked out the details, once he saw it and experienced it, he could believe it. He tucked away the new knowledge he had about Jesus. He allowed it to shift his understanding. And so when somebody later on down the road at the party mentioned Jesus' death, he could say, "Actually, Jesus isn't dead. I saw him myself," and could go on to describe everything that he'd seen. Now, according to tradition, Thomas took these facts that he had about Jesus and the knowledge he had about Jesus, and eventually he went to the place where we now call India and told all the people there what he knew about Jesus. When we can travel again, when it's safe to go places, you can actually go visit what is referred to as his historical church. He's known there in India and other places as well as the Apostle of India. Now in the West, where we are, Thomas sometimes gets this bad rap and this unfortunate nickname of Doubting Thomas. But honestly, I personally don't blame Thomas at all for his skepticism. Thomas didn't have doubt so much as he had unbelief. But so did the other disciples, if we're honest. They didn't believe it when Mary told them Jesus was alive until they saw him. Which of us wouldn't ask for proof that a dead man had come back to life? And what Thomas wasn't really struggling with, it wasn't doubt. He was struggling with one of these 9 monsters we've been discussing these past few weeks in these series. Thomas was struggling with greed. Wait, you say? Thomas didn't struggle with doubt? I don't think so, no. Now, there's actually no doubt. That word doubt isn't mentioned anywhere in this passage. We added that language and that interpretation later. Greed sometimes seems like a strange diagnosis for Thomas, because typically we think of greed as wanting and acquiring more money and stuff, needing multiple climate-controlled storage units, which there are so many to choose from around here, because you can't fit everything into your home. And sometimes we also confuse greed with envy or covetousness. I want more of what you have. But really, those aren't descriptions of greed. That desire to have more and more really describes a few of the other monsters we've talked about the past couple weeks. That's more descriptive really of like gluttony or even lust, the desire to acquire and own and to consume. And greed is different. Greed's different than that. You can actually be quite minimalistic and have the greed monster growling in your ear. Because greed isn't about how much knowledge and stuff you have, it's about holding on to it. Greed is rooted in a worldview of scarcity, that truly everything is in short supply, that there's only so much to go around in the world, and no matter what we're told about that not being true, there really is never quite enough. There's never enough time, there's never enough stuff, enough knowledge, there's never enough you to go around. And this monster says to gather and to ration, not because it's for a job or a hobby or to assist somebody with something, although that could be part of it. It's really in order to be prepared. Because not knowing, not having those things leaves you vulnerable to the things that in the back of your mind you know must inevitably be coming. The greed monster, it hands you the materials to build an internal fortress for yourself, a personal bunker where you can collect knowledge and sometimes stuff about anything and everything that you can. And your mind may always be repeating, I may need this someday. And that could be about knowledge or stuff. Maybe you're the person that collects facts and stores them away like a locked museum basement so that when the time comes, you can distribute that knowledge. You can use that stuff as needed. And if this is your monster, then maybe you are the person who watches YouTube videos and gets books from the library and reads up on things so that you know more about your vacation than the tour guide does. Maybe you're telling them the facts, or you understand the plumbing problem before the plumber even gets there. And maybe you're the kid who read the encyclopedia or all your parents' National Geographics for fun, or you're the kid who always asked why. And any one of you who's ever been around kids has experienced this. You know what I'm talking about. The why behind every single answer, right? Why is the sky blue? Well, because of the atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. Why? Well, because the earth is formed and blah, blah, blah. Why? Because, why? And this can literally go on into eternity. And thankfully, I have never heard of a kid who didn't grow bored with it. But I am convinced that there's probably a world record for asking why somewhere in the world. And if this is your monster, then you've actually never stopped asking why. You're motivated by this lifelong desire, not just to learn, but to understand. And when called upon, you want to be the one that knows. You're that person who always has an interesting fact or something insightful to say about just about everything. And for those of us who find ourselves with this monster, it always feels like you can never know enough. There is an endless amount of things to know and not enough time. But that doesn't keep us from trying. The monster of greed says that we have to analyze every situation before we're in it so that we can understand exactly what we're stepping into, exactly what is required of us, so that we know how much of ourselves and our time and our energy and our knowledge that we have to offer it. Maybe you're always questioning how much information, how much affection, energy, privacy, how much money, how much everything you can afford to give away, and how much you should conserve for yourself and those closest to you. That keeps you competent and independent, and it makes you prepared, and it keeps you in control of the possibility of one day being called upon to distribute what you know or have just when it's needed. So, in order to do this, to accumulate all the knowledge you need just in case, you withdraw from the world and into your mind, into your learning, into your collection of knowledge. And you hold tightly to things because you fear that if you don't contribute at the right time, it's not going to be enough. Or worse, you're going to be viewed as incompetent. Because if you struggle with this monster, it isn't envy or a desire for things or wealth that drive you. This monster of greed is driven by fear. It's the fear of not having the knowledge you need. Because when you don't have the knowledge you need, then you're seen as useless or inadequate or worse, incapable. You are motivated by the fear of what could happen if you don't know. Knowledge isn't just power, it's self-preservation. It's survival. Having a fully stocked mental bunker also means that we hold on to things to make sure we don't need to rely on anyone else. But this can be super lonely, not only for you, but for those who love you. Because it's hard to be in a relationship when those who love you feel you don't need them. You might also be very good at compartmentalizing your life. Feelings and ideas are very separate. And it's been said, you might have heard it, that those who struggle with this monster, those who fight it, the furthest distance inside of them isn't between their head and their feet. It's between their head and their heart. Because when somebody asks you how you feel about something, you tell them what you think. And it's very easy for those of us who have this monster on our backs to argue facts and disregard feelings, because feelings aren't always rational or explainable. Feelings don't follow formulas. And it might be easy just to put your feelings in a box and expect other people to do the same. I mean, when you think about it, ideas are really impersonal things, right? They're just ideas. But you may talk about them personally. They're personal for you, so much so that when somebody disagrees with you or what you're thinking, it feels personal. When they don't like what you've been thinking, it hurts your feelings. And it's hard to internalize that a rejection of ideas is not a rejection of personhood. Now, for those of you that struggle with this monster, I want you to hear me say that knowledge and acquiring knowledge and knowing things, that is not the issue. Knowledge is good. If you are a knowledge collector, hear me say that you are important. We would not be where we are in the world without you. Your mental capacity for understanding and problem solving and inventing are incredible. You are the people who solve some of the world's biggest problems. You connect the dots in ways that other people don't. And that's likely because you probably realize that the world is so much more than black and white, and that things just can't be reduced to things that you're for or things that you're against. There's so much more nuance to pretty much everything. And in order to believe and to think that way, there's a broad spectrum of knowledge that's needed to understand that. That's all good. But what happens when this greed monster starts to take over and tell you things that you need to keep and hold on to is it's the difference between knowing about something and participating in it. It is possible to become so engrossed in your own learning, in your own head, in becoming competent that you actually forget to live. Knowing is not the same as living. And when this greed monster gets out of control, you accept the belief that you must know in order to survive. And that disconnects from relationships and intimacy and really from the full human experience, because knowledge is only useful until it isn't. Until things can't be explained. Until the formula doesn't work anymore. Until everything works and makes sense, and then it just doesn't. Facts don't give a full understanding of humanity. I can learn all about something, Google it, pick up piles of books about it, go to seminars about it, cars, relationships, faith, devotion, even about things like justice and equality. But until I begin to practice what I know, to live in it, until I engage others in community and relationship, it's all just in my head. And I am actually not a participant in my own life. I think sometimes that's why social media can be so attractive, because I can give you knowledge, I can tweet at you or post at you, but not actually ever engage or internalize that you are actually a real person with a real story and feelings. You might have heard of a woman named Jane Goodall. She's pretty famous. So the story about her goes that when she was a child, rather than having a stuffed bear, her father gave her this stuffed chimpanzee. And this started her love for animals, particularly her love for primates. And so when she was 26 years old, she traveled from England to what's now Tanzania to study first the great apes, and then eventually the chimpanzees, for which she's known. And at that time, there was very little known about those animals. Although she'd researched, she studied, she was curious about them, their lives, she was concerned about their imminent extinction at the time. And before Jane came onto the scene, scientists really had only observed what they could of chimpanzees from outside of their habitats, or really kind of on the edges of them, or within them for just short periods of time. But Jane took this really unorthodox approach. She entered into the Gombe Stream National Park to live with the chimpanzees. She did that for many, many years. So for the past 60 years, Jane Goodall has studied chimpanzees by being alongside them, becoming one of the world's first primatologists. Her work, her interactions, her research as a participant in their lives challenged so many long-held beliefs about the animals, about their similarity to humans. At the time, before she started, it was thought that only humans could construct and use tools, and if any of you have been to the zoo, you know that that's not true. It was thought that chimpanzees were vegetarian. It was believed that they were more peaceful than human beings. But as Jane lived among these chimpanzees, these primates, she discovered that what everybody had thought to be true wasn't true at all. But she couldn't have understood that without moving from just knowing it in her head, knowing about the chimps. She had to become proximate to them. She had to have a participatory relationship with them. Her work challenged the way that the world viewed and understood not only chimpanzees, but so many other things, including humans. Leaving your head and participating in community and relationships is dangerous. I'm not suggesting everyone should go live with chimpanzees, but I am suggesting that we have to get out of our head and get into community and relationship with one another. It means being in community and relationship, accepting the fact that you're likely going to be hurt. You are for sure going to be disappointed. But to be in a real relationship and community with someone, you have to leave the shelter of your fortress, of your personal bunker. Becoming a participant is not just being a knower and an observer. Love is dangerous. It's demanding. It's unpredictable and scary. And the great thing about life and people is that they don't follow formulas. The wild thing that this greed monster tells us in our fear and belief of scarcity is that the world wants to drain us, and it wants to get all that it can from us, space and time and knowledge. And so that makes us want to withdraw from community and connectedness. But one of the most important things we can know in this world is interconnectedness and interdependence upon one another. And when we hunker down, we do the opposite of that. When we hunker down in our bunker, we create emancipated emotional intelligence in ourselves, and we never fully develop and understand all of the important things that come with being a human in community: compassion, empathy, connection, vulnerability. So in this way, when we withdraw from community, we're actually creating a huge void in our personal knowledge. So how do we break free from this greed monster that tells us to gather and to grasp and to hold on to? We loosen our grip. Jesus describes it this way: do not worry about your life, what you'll eat, or about your body, what you'll wear, for life is more than food, and the body is more than clothing and knowing. Consider the ravens, they neither sow nor reap. They don't have storehouses or barns, and yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin, yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. And besides, what's the use of worrying? What good does it do? Will it add a single day to your life? Of course not. What I'm trying to do here is get you to relax and not be so preoccupied with getting so that you can respond to God's giving. And Jesus says later, I have come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. We have to move from just observing to participating. We move from greed to non-attachment and generosity. Now, non-attachment is different from detachment. Those who struggle with the monster of greed are actually naturally detached. They remove themselves from the world. They detach from others and retreat into themselves for self-preservation. Non-attachment is opening your hand and letting go of the things that you've held onto so tightly because you believe they were the means to survival. Unattaching yourself from your need to be in control through your own capability. There's a few practices that might help with this. First, practice being present. Find ways to be more than just intellectually present. Come out of your head. You are more than the sum of your knowledge, more than your brain. Others want to know you and not just what you know. Second, remind yourself of the truth that you don't have to have all the knowledge to participate. You don't have to be the most capable one in the room before your ideas and your opinions matter. Third, find and participate in community. And that sounds a little cliche maybe coming from the community pastor, but it's so important. Especially find a community that requires you to be vulnerable, not just to observe vulnerability from a distance. Because opening yourself up to vulnerability, to relationship, it's a release and a loosening of your grip. It's allowing yourself to need other people. It's being generous, not just with your thoughts, but with your feelings. It's relying on others rather than only yourself. It's acknowledging and accepting that it's okay to need other people. And although that can feel unsafe, it will be okay. Because when we refuse to allow others in, it not only deprives us of experiencing and depending upon somebody else, it deprives those who love us of being allowed to care for us. Next, embrace a mindset of abundance. This is a mindset that says, when we give, we also receive. It's the math of Jesus' gospel. When we believe that there is more than enough to go around, we have so much more to give away. I read this book recently by John Green. He's the author of the book Fault in Our Stars and Looking for Alaska. And he recently wrote this book called The Anthropocene Reviewed. Now, this Anthropocene is this big word that basically just describes our current geological age. And Green's book is all this collection of essays about all sorts of things. He has essays on Diet Dr. Pepper, velociraptors, the smallpox vaccine, the song You'll Never Walk Alone, so much more. But at the end of each of these essays, Green gives the topic a rating on a 5-star scale. And he describes in the introduction how prior to the internet, in particular and especially the Amazon 5-star book ratings, we really didn't rate the world around us, at least not on so much like this defined scale. But now, in our world, we are asked to rate pretty much everything. Books, stores, churches, schools, vacations, food, recipes. If there's something that exists in this world, then there's probably a rating for it, or there will be. And Green argues that one of the problems we have in our current Anthropocene is that the 5-star rating doesn't work for humans. People, and actually most other things, are much more complicated than that can be depicted through ratings. Ratings may give facts, but they don't help us know the truth. And there's one particular essay in his book that's particularly helpful, I think, in conquering this greed monster. Green, he alludes several times to the necessity of being present in the world. And although he doesn't talk specifically in these terms, Green discusses the importance of coming out of our personal fortresses, letting people in. He talks about not just being present in your mind, but also in your body, being aware of your breathing, of your life, of your being, allowing ourselves to feel, not just think. And this is an important step to taming this monster, opening our hands and moving from our heads into our lives. And Green writes this really beautiful thing. To fall in love with the world isn't to ignore or overlook suffering, both human or otherwise. For me, anyway, to fall in love with the world is to look up at the night sky and feel your mind swim before the beauty and the distance of the stars. It is to hold your children while they cry and watch the sycamore trees leaf out in June. When my breastbone starts to hurt and my throat tightens and tears will know my eyes, I want to look away from feeling. I want to deflect with irony or anything else that will keep me from feeling directly. We all know how love ends, but I want to fall in love with the world anyway, to let it crack me open. I want to feel what there is to feel while I am here. So if this is your monster, keep on thinking and solving problems and making the world a better place. But don't forget to loosen your grip in order to move from thinking into living. I want to take just a few minutes at the end of our time today to simply be present, to notice our breath, to notice our life, to be grateful.
Thank you for joining us today, and welcome home. If you are in need of assistance during this crisis, please reach out at crosspoint.org/help.